to Queens Makeup Hair podcast. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Sam.
And we're happy to be here for episode 10.
Episode 10. We had to count.
We did. I had to look and make sure that I was going to say the right number because I know Sam would have called me out on that mistake.
This is actually the one thing that I'm just like, I have no idea how many we have made and posted. So
feels like yesterday. It feels like 10 years ago. Just everywhere in between.
I don't know about 10 years ago, but, a couple months.
Yeah, we've had a really good time. And we're getting a lot of feedback, I would say, in the community, which I think is really cool.
I'm actually a little surprised, just because
we're actually kind of cool.
I don't think that we are that. I'm surprised that people have invested and listened. They're long episodes, so I know that
they didn't say they've watched all of it, but
this is true. I have a really hard time dedicating time to watching and listening things, so I do appreciate that people.
I've been listening. I'm not like super self-centered just to listen to our podcast. I have been listening to other podcasts during like my lunch break and like on the way to work and on the way home from work, and so I've tried to supplement podcasts for music a little bit, just that kind of interchanging.
I think that a lot of people do that. I have a really hard time listening to podcasts, especially like while I'm driving and stuff, because I don't take in what people are saying unless I can see it also.
I do like the visual podcast, this kind of setup, and maybe that's why I really like doing this, but I do appreciate being able to see someone and feel like there's more of a connection.
Yeah, I do. I take in the information a lot better if I'm watching and listening.
Right.
But I do appreciate other podcasts. When I was in nursing school a lot, I would listen to straight A nursing. I was trying to put any information in my brain that I could. In between.
So not podcasts for enjoyment.
It was I'm really bad at podcasts for enjoyment. So this is outside my comfort zone to do a podcast for enjoyment and for knowing that it's a podcast. Obviously,
I gotcha. That makes sense.
So it's definitely a little outside of my wheelhouse. That's what's your baby.
Yes, yes. But we appreciate the feedback. Continue to give us feedback, comment, let us know what you want to hear. We have a good topic, I think, for discussion today. One that I would say a lot of times gets overlooked and maybe just swept under the rug. And I'm certainly interested to hear my wife's perspectives of this topic, and also I'm interested to hear y'all's feedback as well. So we're always open to kind criticism, but also just your thoughts and how you can join this conversation. But the topic of today's discussion is discussion is discrimination. So Sam, what's your take on discrimination? Like what would your definition be?
I don't like how I always have to give the definition and you ask the questions. The immediate come to mind is discrimination is in the phrasing, but being against people because of age, sex, or religion, basically.
The isms.
Yes. Race. I think I left that one out. So I think about it in terms of work a lot. That's like the plaster of, we do not discriminate against age, sex, race, religion. But I do know that discrimination goes way, way deeper than that, obviously.
Yeah. And when we were talking about this topic, the first thing that we were thinking about is how many people across the board that we know, family and friends, and even personal stories that we'll share, that have experienced these isms, the ageism, sexism, for racism. People, racism. That there's such a huge dynamic of what discrimination encompasses. That it in fact it impacts so many groups of people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what from your perspective, how do you see discrimination being used or happening in subtle ways? And in that, why is it, would you say, difficult for people to sometimes recognize discrimination?
I have a hard time talking about this without specific, like, personal examples. And so I know we're planning to talk about personal examples. So I do see, we live in the South, and as someone, I've traveled a lot. I've traveled internationally. I've traveled coast to coast. And living in the South is a very different, I feel like it's more obvious, I guess I should say. The subtleties, some people that have discriminatory thoughts or actions, it's just so ingrained into them to have these negative thoughts against people of minorities, the isms. And so I think that when I travel and I don't see these micro discriminations on the day-to-day, I think that's where I've realized more, I thought that I had it figured out. I thought I was doing really good to not be part of the isms. But on the other end of that, I've learned accessibility. Like, for example, especially going to bigger cities where infrastructure is better for people with disabilities, people walking, ramps on places. You know, it's not even a second thought to have additional places for people with disabilities. And sometimes here, especially the rural South, I have been in situations where I'm like, I used to do sort of like a home health situation, taking people with disabilities into places, and it wasn't accessible for them.
I will say, I'm going to give a shout out to our access and testing service crew at UACCB. They do a phenomenal job of thinking outside of the box in a lot of ways of what sometimes I think about, like the doors, you know, the handicap doors. Yeah. Like when one of those is out, I mean, like we're on it, we get that fixed. And sometimes like when one doesn't work somewhere, it doesn't even cross my, cause I can just open the door. Whereas not everyone has that ability, you know? And so I give a huge shout out to Luis and Billy with Access and Testing Services at UACCB, because they're always thinking about those things. And they do a really good job.
I think too, especially having children they are biracial. They both have learning disabilities, and accessibility, especially for my son. He has apraxia of speech. And so it's something that I've been aware of for a really long time, but especially now, because my kids have these certain, check marks of disabilities and minority groups, of what does that look like and how can it be better for everyone?
You know, and I think growing up, especially in a small town, like when I thought of discrimination, I thought of racism. Like I thought of people being racist and that sort of thing. And it's so sad to me to think back to
I'm gonna cry in this episode too, I can tell.
where I thought, man, we've got it right. Like our community has it right. Like we are accepting, we aren't discriminating, we're not doing these awful things. And
you sort of grew up on the other side of the river, if you're from around here, where there were not Black students at Southside. And when they did come in, it was not accepting. It was really, really bad for them. And people got away with some really, really nasty stuff. Nasty may not be the best word, but they were terrible. They were terrible to these students who transferred in. And so I sort of have this different, I have never felt like we've gotten it right. I feel like we're getting better.
Well, I was about to say, even just hearing people that I went to school with, Black people that I went to school with, and just their perspective of how we did not have it right, you know. And it's like this shame and just, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry, you know. I cannot believe that I was blind to so many things. And it is, it's just disheartening that we in a lot of ways aren't learning.
Yeah. And in that, I mean, obviously we are white women, but there is a really strong example is the word I'm trying to find, but that's not like the word that I want. Like we have to do better, because people who have been fighting for equality, they've been fighting. They're tired. We have to be an example, and we have to advocate for these things to be better.
Yeah. I think I really learned, especially with the racism, I think I really learned that, and I'm ashamed to say that it took me this long to really see it, but when the Black Lives Matter stuff was going on, and some people that I know and were close to and, you know, consider good friends and that sort of thing, it's like I heard the all lives matter. Oh, well, all lives matter. And it wasn't that they were hating on these Black people. I don't think, I'm not going to say for sure, but I don't think that their perspective was malicious. But it was also like, you're not getting it.
And you're not getting generationally ingrained, just because someone has an equal opportunity doesn't mean there's less for the person who isn't discriminated against. And that is so hard for people, it seems, to get. Not all people, the people who are saying all lives matter. When we all have pie, we all have pie. When you go to a birthday party, everybody gets a piece of cake.
It's equity. It's not equality that's important. And that is exactly what it is when I would hear all lives matter. It's like you're not getting it. And you're not getting the reasoning why we're having to say Black Lives Matter. Like you don't get that. And so I mean, that was like what, COVID time, 2020, 2021.
Well, that wasn't the start of it.
No, but that was when
we just had time to focus on it a little bit more, because we didn't have to be in office, you know, or you know, at the 9 to 5 or whatever.
So,
I will say, like, I know that I'm already getting teary-eyed. This topic, like, actually makes me so emotional. And so,
tell us about that.
The emotions.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the emotional side of it.
I'm not here for therapy. One, it's something that, again, like, I sort of thought I had it figured out. I've dated Black people, Hispanic people, you know, so I never
considered yourself
right. I never considered myself racist, but when I found out that other people who were really close to me, people who taught me you should treat everybody equally, or you should always help someone in need. These same people, factory settings was, there's actually a sociological study from whenever that it's called Not in My Backyard. And so, like, it's okay. This is sort of like your racist scale. So just talking about racism specifically, but it's okay if Black people live in my community. Black people are people of color. It's okay. Of course we want equality with that. It's okay if people go to our school. Oh, are they going to be my neighbor? Are they my next door neighbor? Oh, I don't really know if I want those kind of people in my backyard. So Not My Backyard was like that. Those people, kids, want to play with my people's kids. Oh, that sounds a little off. Yeah. Or, and sort of like the final one is like how you feel about interracial relationships. So I love the story about, I'm going to brag a little bit on my dad on this one and my mom. But I moved to Batesville when I was 5. So before that we lived in Blytheville, which is predominantly a Black community. And my mom had told me the story, I mean, many years after we had moved to Batesville.
But my dad had gone in and asked my mom, what are we going to do if Maggie brings home a black man to date? And my mom was like, then we're gonna make sure that he's treating Maggie like a man should. Like, it was just like he was another man, in the picture, that it didn't matter if he was black, white, yellow, red. I mean, like, it didn't matter, that as long as he treated me good, then that was fine. And my dad was like, okay, yeah. So it was like, it was just that validation of, okay, yeah, sounds good. Joke's on y'all, married a woman. But
we do have black kids.
We do have black children, so it's
So
it's a good circle.
My sort of first realization that my people were not in my backyard people. I will say, so let me say this, like, my mom exponentially grew. I educated her. I didn't know that I was going to be the educator, but like I did. And so, she got better. But I was 14 and I wasn't allowed to date. There was a lot of strict rules and stuff. And I sort of like had this like little secret boyfriend. Then we texted and everything. And
not your secret admirer.
No, that's a story.
That's a different story.
I didn't know. So we had texted, like we had met at summer camp or whatever, and like texted, and we were at this, I think it was the parade, maybe like in the summer. And he came up to me and I was like making the eyes like, don't come up to me. I'm not supposed to have a boyfriend. That's what I was thinking. I'm not supposed to have a boyfriend. And he came up to me and was like, oh, I haven't heard from you in a few days. Like, you okay, friend? And my mom lost it. And it was, I felt guilty because I was doing something wrong because I had a boyfriend. But she was like, what are you doing with that black boy? And I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't know that there was like
I thought it was just a boy.
I just thought it was just boys.
Yeah.
And so that really put, we've talked before about like my relationship with my mom as a teenager. That put a big wedge between us because I was like, that's not okay. Like, that's not okay. You can make your rules about me having a boyfriend, but we don't get to have levels of, and so I wonder if she had reacted the same way if it was a white boy. Mind you, he is still one of my friends. He's wonderful. He's great. He's lived his life, and he has always been this incredible, incredible man and friend. So to anyone's, default settings of black people are less than or not good or whatever, he's an attorney, he's badass, and he's incredible. Like, so he would have been a really good one, and my mom was really judgmental. Joke's on her. Now I have a wife.
And I think that my mom was educated because she taught at Osceola, and so she's from Newark, Arkansas. Very few black people. And
what's crazy though is my mom was in the military. Like, she traveled all over the world. She had really, really good friends who were of other races. It just was not allowed to be the backyard. Yeah. So that was like my first realization of like,
oh, racism is happening.
And right so in my house. Yeah. In my house. So then a really big significant moment. I was 17 and I had a boyfriend. He was black. I was allowed to date boys at this time. I wasn't sneaking around, but my mom had a problem with him being black. She was still a little cautious. And she said, and I do sort of understand more now. She just wasn't getting it. It wasn't all the pieces were there. So she was like, I am worried that you will not be able to handle whatever people say about you when you date a black person.
Which is kind of what she said right before she died about us.
Yes.
It wasn't just because of the race. It was anyone who was out of the norm.
Yes.
For you, right?
So I now sort of understand that she knew how bad it was, and she didn't want me to be in a situation where people were going to be mean to me. Joke's on her. People bullied me for other reasons. She raised a weird kid. It didn't have anything to do with who I was dating.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone that makes fun of you because you're with a woman. People make fun of you for another thing.
Yeah, no.
I make fun of you for so many other things.
I was a weird kid, but also that was not something that broke my heart. What broke my heart was my mom was acting in discriminatory ways.
Yes.
So that's where my little sensitive heart was. But I was 17. This is a wild story, but like I met my biological father for the first time. And my boyfriend was black. My mom knew. He's a great kid. And we live in a community where families know families. So like their grandparents knew my grandparents. Mm-hmm. And at this point my mom had been like, "Do you want me to tell your grandpa what you've been doing?" And I said, "Yes, because what am I doing? I'm having a boyfriend finally."
And wasn't your grandpa chill? Like, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he wasn't always chill about everything. He made a lot of like
backhanded comments and
straightforward comments. Yeah. But when it came to me, he trusted me more than whatever had been ingrained in him. And my mom brought it up to him and he was like, "Anita, don't you think you raised her to be smart? Don't you think she's going to be with somebody who's going to be good to her?" And he was like, "I've known that family for 100 years, basically. They're good people." And so he like could mesh when a person was good, they were good. And that actually didn't matter their color of their skin. So I met my father and, 17, meeting my biological father for the first time. We had connected and that's a different story. But so met him, and he pulled me aside like the night before I was supposed to go back home. A flight. I'm in Georgia. I'm away from everybody, and he was like, "I don't approve of you being with a black person." And he was like, "You got to think about the children and like what people are going to say about you." And he said, "Anytime I've seen a black person try to come into my office and get a job, they're going to have to work a lot harder than a white person would." And so it became obvious that this wasn't just a conversation of not in my backyard. This was deep. Mm-hmm. This was really deep. And I said, "I don't need your approval because that's who my mother raised." And he should have known who he was talking to because he knew my mother. So that was this moment of like, I feel like that was my like firepower defying moment of being like, I am going to do whatever I want and I'm going to stand by black people of color in general, but because this is absolute asinine ridiculousness that someone would not like somebody, not met them even, know that they are of a different race and automatically say, "Nope, do not approve." And actually, when I married my ex-husband, that was sort of the conversation as well with my biological father. And so obviously we don't have a very good relationship, but because he's not someone who's willing to change. And unlike my mother who did.
Right.
And she was coming at it from I don't want people to be mean to you perspective, but she should have been on the side of, I'm going to be better and not let people be mean. I'm going to correct them. But she wasn't healed enough to do that for other people yet. So.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And in that, I mean, there's a lot of, again, the other isms out there.
The other isms, which we should talk about next.
Yeah.
So speaking of the other isms, you have not dated black men. But you have experienced.
I've dated a lot of men.
This is true. Well, you were never married for me. But I know that you have your own experiences with you're a woman, which that is a minority group. You are in the LGBTQ plus community. So those are some things. Yeah. So is there anything, getting away from racism, that maybe you have experienced or secondhand witnessed?
Yeah. I don't know what my ism is. I don't know what that ism is called.
Yeah, I feel like it's weird when it's sexism obviously makes sense. But I hate when people, are you about to talk about
gayism?
Gayism? Yeah. I hate actually when people call it like homophobic because the name phobic means like afraid of. And so we have to have a better word for this. And gayism is the only thing we can think of yet.
I like it. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but
I mean, it's even ableism for like disabled people. Like it's the ism, but I don't know where the.
Yeah. So it was last summer. It was last summer, and
yes.
I had, and this is the first time. Keep in mind, I'd been married. We've been married for over a year. We've been dating for 3 years, and so this last summer was the first time I would say that I've experienced gayism. We'll just call it that. To the point where I didn't get something that I thought I deserved.
Mm-hmm.
We've had the people who we aren't really in our lives anymore that have made statements and comments about us being gay, but it just kind of rolls off. Like,
you're gay.
They're not. They're not in our life anymore. We don't. It's not.
Yeah, and it's okay.
Like, we set the boundaries. It's good. But this is the first time that I didn't get something again that I thought that I had deserved.
That you 100% deserved.
Yeah. So I had applied as an adjunct instructor for John Brown University.
Wait. Will you list your credentials of why you feel that you were deserving of the job? Because that, I think, makes a difference.
Well, I'm getting there.
I'm sorry.
I'm getting there.
Okay. You were just telling it in a different storyline.
I'm telling it in a different story way.
That's okay. Sorry.
So I had applied for an adjunct position, which is part-time teacher, essentially instructor for... well, and it was actually going to be for our clinical... and practicum students, our internship and that sort of thing. We have to do you have to do like so many hours in the classroom as well as so many hours in your internship and practicum. I went to John Brown University. That's where I got my master's from. So I have a master's in clinical mental health counseling and a bachelor's in psychology from Lyon College. And Lyon has asked me to teach, so this is no hate towards Lyon. So
we like Lyon.
They're wonderful. They're very accepting. And John Brown was too, and that's what is.
You also have a PhD. You didn't mention
I'm not done talking. Quit interrupting me. Let me tell my gayism story.
You just
and so I also have a PhD in psychology, so that's the one Sam really wants me to tell you guys about. So I had gone into this interview thinking, oh, this looks good because I have a PhD in psychology. I can teach psychology, so I could teach the undergrad students. I could also teach, because of my master's in clinical mental health counseling, I could teach the counseling students. And that was one thing I was really excited about, was to do the practical and internship courses. Like I said, I went to John Brown. I had several of my classmates that were out. I was not out yet, but most people tell me it wasn't hard to tell.
Out of what?
Out of the closet. So I had a lot of students that were classmates that were a part of the LGBTQ community. I went to both the Siloam Springs, Rogers, and Little Rock campus all in my time there. So I think the only other one was in Fort Smith at the time. I'm not sure if that one's still open. But went to school there. They, I believe, consider themselves a non-denominational school. That is, I believe, how they're listed.
Okay.
And Lyons Presbyterian.
Point for Lyon. And Reverend Maggie.
Yes, and our guest, Maggie, also, that was on a few weeks ago. And so I had applied and got an email right back of like, hey, we want to interview you. We see that you're an alum. That looks basically really good. Had actually gone through the first round of interviews with somebody in the psychology department. I don't remember exactly what his title was, but he was like, absolutely, like, you can teach our undergrad students, you can teach our graduate students in counseling. You basically are a phenomenal candidate for this. I'd also been doing adjunct work, teaching abnormal psychology. I taught developmental psychology by that point. and again had gone through the program. Like I did the hours, I did the practicums, I did the clinicals, I did all the things, and graduated. Had a phenomenal, yes, I did graduate and pass my licensure exam
on the first try.
So I had done all the things. I thought this was a shoe-in. I had to meet with again, not entirely sure what the title was, dean of this person. The final interview that I had was with somebody in the administration, but she was not over the counseling department or the psychology department. She's like, yeah, your resume's amazing, like you look great, but when can you start, sort of thing. And so I'm thinking, okay, like I'm texting Sam, hey, by possibly the fall, I'm gonna be driving to Little Rock once a week to do practicum with these students and possibly teaching some online. And so we get to the end, what I think is like the end, where we're about to just make the final deal here. And she says, there's one more requirement. You have to sign basically a statement that says you will not have sex before marriage, or you will be in a I can't remember how she worded it, but basically a man and a woman relationship. And I said, well, I can't sign that. That's a problem. I said, I am in fact married to a woman. And there was just like this dead silence on her end.
But did you think, well, I'll get a sentence out in a minute, that they had done all this and then we sort of think that maybe they went back through and looked at your social media and stuff.
Maybe, but why would they even entertain the idea of interviewing me?
Well, I think that it was weird because it was like the shift change of, it almost was like she knew that you weren't going to be able to sign that. And maybe we were wrong, but maybe. I think when we were talking about it, it was like you had done all the interviews and then maybe they looked at your social media.
Maybe.
And I think we weren't married.
We were. This was
at the very beginning of the interviews. Yeah. Oh, I thought maybe we didn't live together.
This was last spring, so about a year ago. It wasn't quite.
For some reason, I thought maybe we didn't live together yet.
Yeah, no, we were married, living together.
Because we did not live together.
We
did not live together before we were married.
So I said no. I will not. I cannot sign that. Sam would be so upset if I signed that.
Yeah, we just got married.
And so she said, "Oh, well, yeah, that is a problem." And I said, "So I'm guessing I don't have the job." And she said, "No." And I said, "Well, that's a shame." Because I said it. At this point I had nothing to lose, but I was like, I would have been a hell of a candidate. I would have been a hell of an adjunct for you guys. And those students are missing out on someone who has a lot of really good experience. I've had experience in residential day treatment facilities, inpatient, outpatient, and now where I work at UACCB, have a very, very broad experience.
Even with children, yeah.
Yeah, the day treatment and residential was with adolescent females and also the K through 12. So yeah, and then adult inpatient, you see everything across the board. So I was like, yeah, it's your loss. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and cry and beg. But this is what I find fascinating about this, is I don't blame her. I don't necessarily even think homophobic is the only word. I don't necessarily think that she's just super homophobic, because she asked me the question. She said, well, you have gone through the program. What was your experience like going through that program and experiencing gayism? And so I was like, I didn't see it. And again, I'm going to shout out some of my instructors that I had. I would have never guessed that would have been the policy that John Brown had. I had some wonderful instructors, and we follow the American Counseling Code, the ACA Code of Ethics. And in that, it says you will not discriminate against whether there's research or you're with a client based on race, sexual orientation, age, all the things. And so I was like, I never saw that. I never saw that be an issue in any of the clinical settings that I was in. And I certainly never saw it in class. I was like in my social and culture class that we had. And again, huge shout out Dr. Abby White. She was phenomenal. And I still talk about this class. And I had actually messaged her on Facebook not too long ago. But I was like, I still think about that class because she brought in a number of guest speakers. So instead of just reading it out of a book or and she would have done a phenomenal job teaching on it, not saying that, but she brought in groups of people from these backgrounds. And so we had a transgender female to male individual come in, and that was back in 2017 maybe. And so I would say it was right on the cusp of really seeing LGBTQ before it was like before any of the pride stuff here started, so it was fascinating to hear this guy's story and just his transition and the discrimination that he had experienced along the way. But that was a number of groups that came in and spoke in that class, talked about the discrimination that they had experienced. We had a group of immigrants. We had there was 3 Muslims from the Islamic religion come in and speak, and it was everybody had the common thread of discrimination and being discriminated against. And so to hear their stories, I feel like that was the one class that I remember. And I remember calling my mom on the way home, and I think it was from hearing the immigrants' perspective of them migrating from Mexico and just crying and saying, "We are horrible people," and I'm just crying, and I'm like, I had no idea. And so that was really the shift. If we think about from an educational perspective, for me to go, oh, we have to do better. And John Brown has to do better. Like that, to still adopt this foreign old policy of not hiring someone from the LGBTQ community is absolutely insane.
It's also, credit to this, they are not breaking a law. They are a private institution.
Correct.
So there's not a whole lot that can be done on the other end of that, except, well, they clearly didn't get the absolute best candidate.
I agree. I would have been phenomenal.
Yeah. And on the other end of that, Maggie would not let me email anybody or go down to the John Brown University and start knocking on doors.
Yeah, Sam and Amanda, I feel like we're a lot more angry than I was. It was more of a just not, I won't say discouragement, but it was just a disappointment.
I feel like disheartening is a good word.
It was very disheartening, and not necessarily that I didn't get the job. It was just that
the reason why.
It was the reason why, and the fact that I had gone to school there, and that I had not seen it. Again, I was blind to it. Maybe it was one of those things. Just I wasn't out yet, and so I didn't see it. But also, it was just so out of left field. And it truly, because I had talked to some friends and family, like, you're surprised, and I was like, yeah, I am, based on
your experience,
my experience through the counseling department.
Yeah, and the counseling department, while it is under the university, like you said, it follows a specific guideline, and that they hire like-minded people typically, and so. In that, I'm sure they were all allies,
Sure. I have no doubt that, and Abby's the first one that comes to mind, and again, because of her social and culture class, but I have no doubt that, like, she's 100% an ally.
Oh, yeah.
And would think that policy is insane. But I think that
I also wonder if, like, how long that policy has been in place. I mean, it could have been foundationally in place.
Oh, for sure.
But, like, I wonder if you messaged that professor and you were like, just for funsies, I applied for this position, like, were you aware of this policy? Or like, because
Well, she's
obviously,
not there anymore.
well, these people though that could have like vouched for your work ethic and your,
Well, at that point, I didn't want the job.
well,
Like, I mean,
I still want
hey,
you to
if
get it.
you don't want me, okay, fine, I'll move on.
But in hats tossed in, how many people truly have a PhD? Like, what's the percentage of the population? You don't know? I think it's like, it's pretty low. I want to say it's like less than 3% or something like that. And so to have someone who has a very, very specific credentials, how many more applicants could there have even been that they were willing to turn you down based on this policy? Which also, back to racism, but also like religious and race, the immigrants are taking our jobs. It's a sort of one of the, like, did you have a PhD? Did you have a you know, like, these people who have these outstanding or upstanding, I guess is a better job title, they went through the training. Like, the hat is in, and there's only so many people that have these certain credentials. And so a lot of our residents at the hospital are foreign residents here. And I love the culture shift, the knowledge that they're bringing in, all of these things. But especially a lot of the older generation will say, you know, they're all categorized as Indian, and they're all and or Middle Eastern, and I mean, just the I can't even say it without saying it in their like tone, but you know, they just all come over here to steal our jobs, and I'm just pretty sure that Joe Blow does not qualify to be a doctor.
No.
That's my little tangent off of
Yeah.
that. But to have, you know, to have these policies or this discrimination against whatever the ism is ridiculous.
Yeah, and you know, one of the connections that wanted to bring up is how discrimination can impact mental health. And I will say, I think I'm fortunate that this happened to me when it happened, because if this had happened, you know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, 10 years ago in my career,
would have signed it.
Well, maybe I've signed it. But if I had been married to you and this had happened and they had turned me down, I think it would have broke me. I mean, I think it would have been devastating and really made me question my self-worth as a counselor and as an instructor. Now I was like, your loss, whatever. Like, it truly, like I said, it was disheartening, but it didn't make me question me.
Yeah.
And it didn't make me question us. It didn't make me question my sexuality. Also, well, no, we'll get on that tangent. But like, again, you had to sign it and say that you weren't going to live with someone even in a heterosexual relationship unless you're married. Like,
y'all checking?
Oh, what? Yeah. So it was just, anyway. So, but yeah, it didn't certainly have the same impact on me that I think it would have had early on in my career. So
there's sort of the no premarital sex. One, purity culture that's a topic for another. That's a whole different tangent.
Yeah, that's a different topic.
Insurance and everything. So there's like layers of discrimination within that too. And so like, we don't want to insure you. Like, we don't want to provide and pay for insurance if you might accidentally get pregnant and have maternity leave. Companies hate maternity leave. And then on the other side of that, there's not like tax-wise, bracket-wise, everything. You don't have to put your money together. And so now that I know is not necessarily their reasoning, but you see this a lot, that resources aren't available for people who are unmarried, or they're harder to access when you're unmarried. And so there's certain things like people don't want people to get pregnant. They don't want to pay
Yeah.
for somebody to be pregnant. So a woman in themselves, I've had friends who were in different job positions. Maternity leave doesn't kick in. You don't qualify for that unless you've been in a job for a year. There's like so many different layers of this, and it's like, now wait a minute. Sometimes you don't plan when things happen. Sometimes things are blessings. You just never know what is going to happen. But so I've had female friends who would not, some people can't take birth control. There's like just these layers of discrimination for multiple reasons. And we're just like scratching the surface of what that looks like.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And the other example that I think is such a big example, and I wish she was alive today because I think she could be a guest on our podcast and tell it from her perspective. But my grandma experienced ageism when she was working for the power plant and had gotten laid off, and had the company had brought in a number of youngins individuals to do the job. And so her and I don't know how many other people.
But what they did was they wanted her to train.
Yeah, they wanted her to train the young people.
And then she worked as the HR person, right?
Yes, something like that.
So she had to see when all these people were fired.
Yeah.
So they kept giving her files, she said, of, this person, they not necessarily, they laid off.
Laid off.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, these persons got laid off, and, we had to make cuts. And what they did was give her the case.
Yeah, basically.
So she said, I started putting pieces together, and I just sort of wrote down everybody's names and how old they were. And then she won the case because they gave the case to her.
Yeah. And so I thought about her a lot because she died like 6 or 7 months before I had the John Brown interview. And I just remember thinking, God, she'd be so pissed off. Like I think I made the comment she might have driven to Siloam Springs.
Oh yeah, we would have went together. There would have been no stopping. I would have been like, let's go. And
so, but I also remember thinking like, I just remember my self-worth not being impacted and thinking she's a huge reason in that. Like, she's a huge reason that, like, I know I'm great, and I know that would have been a fantastic adjunct for these students, because she always said, don't always fight back in one way or another. And so I think just for me being continuing to work hard in my career and build my career, and especially even with the students that I teach, that I think gives me the satisfaction and the joy to keep doing what I'm doing, and also still be gay, and also still be married to a woman.
Yeah. Something that we like sort of in the list is like the socioeconomic discrimination as well. And I come across this in the hospital a lot too. We were watching this show, the Lizzie McGuire movie. We're on this little like old school.
We're watching all the old Disney Channel movies.
Even the the things that people were allowed to say in movies then. The principal, she made a comment. So they went to Italy for their little
junior high
class trip
excursion.
And she said, these, you guys aren't with the mouth breathers and the trailer trash who went on the other little trip. So she, even like this, the TV land of what we have been taught.
Discrimination within the race, like, too.
Yes.
Like, such a big thing.
Yes.
Discrimination within a race.
Yes. And I grew up poor. So, but even within that poorness, there's like trailer trash, and then there's like okay poor people. so like, I mean, there's levels.
You're an okay.
I'm an okay poor people.
What is an okay?
Listen, we didn't live in a trailer. I think that was like the only difference. I don't know, but so that's just another thing that like we haven't gotten into. So if you add that in to the socioeconomic, the person of color, women, the gayism, ageism, so any of these levels, and I'm circling back to the mental health. So any of these levels, and we start to overlap and say we start checking these boxes. I'm an okay poor person.
I'm an okay gay person.
I'm an okay gay person, and I'm a white person, and now I'm a person of divorce, and so that's a whole other. Not divorce with Maggie. That's a whole other, there's a lot of discrimination against that actually. And I'm a person with Black kids who often, now I'm very lucky that we live in a small community, but there's a lot of stereotypes for Black dads. And it's really disheartening to know that these stereotypes are there, or that people have created a stereotype of what they think of when there's a white woman and a Black man. And something that I found myself doing, especially here, not so much in Charleston. I feel like a lot more was accepted in Charleston, but like if I had the kids out when Forrest and I were married, if I had the kids out in public and he was not with me, my wedding ring was on, because I did not want anyone to have this idea of whatever stereotype that they had, that he was some deadbeat dad just because he wasn't at the grocery store with me. And I was talking to, I think she was a guidance counselor at one of the high schools, and she was like, oh, how have you been? And blah, blah, blah. And she was saying how somehow we got on the topic of my kids are Black, obviously. It's kind of hard to hide. And so she was like, oh, Southside's gotten, they're so much better. Basically, there's more Black people now. And I was like,
but does it make it better? Like, does that make the people better?
And I said, I just don't know that Batesville is better. And I told her, but just Batesville in general, the community in general, Southside specifically, they have a lot of growing to do. But I said, I don't know that the community is better. Yeah. And let me tell you why. I said, I feel like I have to wear my wedding ring when my kids are out with me, because I don't want people to think that he is some deadbeat dad, because he's not. He's a very good dad. And we are married, and like these things. And she was like, well, I have never thought about that. And I said, no, but what do you think when you see a white person with Black, biracial, or biracial kids in the grocery store? What do you automatically think?
Yeah. And I think that from a mental health perspective, the most important thing that we can try to be mindful of in those moments is how we have empathy. Yes. And just how we, in some ways, can try to put ourselves in other people's shoes. Not that we always want to, but like when I hear, even just watching like the Lizzie McGuire movie last night, I'm catching
we had a lot of questions.
So many. We should have recorded ourselves watching that movie. But now I can be mindful in moments, and I'm by no means perfect with this, but I can now look at something or hear something and hear that's not okay. And it's not okay because I have empathy towards this person. Like when the principal made the comment about the Italian people standing there and her saying to the students, keep your money in your front pockets.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not okay.
And it was Paolo.
Well,
he had money.
To be fair, he was
he did sketchy. Have money though.
And so, but I can now look at, and even like back to the All Lives Matter, like I can hear those things now and be mindful in that moment and have empathy for all of my Black friends in the Black community and say, that's not okay. No, this is a Black Lives Matter
even if movement. You don't have someone that you know directly in one of these communities, it should still matter to you how you respond to people, not you directly, you listening. And on the like addition to the empathy that you have to have towards people, when a person tells you that they have had an experience, believe that it is true. Don't try to
justify
cover it or justify what the experience is. believe that is what it is.
And also talk about it. So, like, I know I'm gay. It's okay if we talk about that. You know, the kids are Black. It's okay if we talk about them being Black.
My friend used to say, they would be like, it was my 14-year-old boyfriend. He said, people say Black like it's cancer. They'll be like, do you know they're Black? And he was like, I'm fully aware that I am Black. And he was like, that's not anything that we need to quiet down. Like, if you're gonna ask a question like, I'm Black. Mm-hmm. He was like, so it's not cancer. We're not whispering a diagnosis. Yeah. People know that they're what they are.
Yeah. Again, I think about, like, I don't automatically meet people and go, oh, is that person gay or straight? Like, that's not my first. Oh, that person's Black, so they can't do this job. Like, that's not even a thought. And so it's like, I think that it's empathy and being able to hear someone's story, look at someone, and appreciate their role in this world. I had a supervisor tell me one time that, you know, everyone, all 7 billion people in this world are walking around with a 1 on their forehead. He was like, no one has a 0 and no one has a 2. Everyone just has a 1. And it was like this idea that we all have this equitable perspective. We all have this equality, I think was what he used. But I like the equitable perspective of people get the pie when they need the pie. But it was like, no one's better and no one's less than. And regardless of if you're gay, straight, Black, white,
poor,
62, 26. I mean, you know, we all have so much purpose in this world, and I like these kinds of conversations because I think that they help us open the door for people to be more mindful and to be more kind and to be more empathetic.
I hope so.
Yeah, we hope so. We hope that this is a good conversation for you guys. But just to think about, like, how can I be more kind? And that's, I think, to be more kind outside of your race, but also inside of your race as well.
Like the white poor people.
It's okay white poor person.
From the poor people over here.
Her name is Samantha Wilson.
She's poor. I think are we closing?
We're closing.
We're closing. This has been good. Yeah. And I know the experiences are a little bit different. Obviously, we are white women, so that takes a little bit different account. Yeah, just be kind.
Be kind.
And advocate for other people to have kindness.
Let's see.
You gonna close this out, or?
I was just looking to see if there's anything else I wanted to ask you. I will ask one more question. What does creating a more inclusive and compassionate community look like?
I think I touched on it just a little bit about, like, you know, wheelchair accessibility. Braille. Like, there's not a lot of people that we think about Braille personally in our lives, but the people who need it. So it hurts nothing and no one to have Braille on signs. Hurts nothing and no one, truthfully, if we had Spanish and English signs. Because why don't I want someone to know where the bathroom is? Or the kitchen, or the whatever, like the exit, the road signs. So most things that can be inclusive and compassionate hurts nobody, but helps the people who need it.
I love when we go to, especially Broadway. I feel like Broadway musicals have it set up when they've got the ASL, the interpreter.
I love the interpreters,
and they get with it, especially the music. Like, I find that fascinating.
Yes, to encapsulate, it hurts. Yeah, hurts no one.
No,
And truthfully, a lot of handicap accessible things help me too.
Poor, the,
for
okay,
example,
poor person.
but for example, the like on a sidewalk where it dips down and you can like, you know, push your stroller up easier, or your wagon, or your bicycle. Those were initially created for people in wheelchairs, but how many other people use them who are not using wheelchairs?
Yeah.
So having accessibility typically makes everybody's life better. I think about Elijah with his apraxia. So it's hard for him. He has a talker tablet, which is incredible. And we can understand him a lot more now, but there are some students who truly need access to a talker tablet and they just haven't been able to get them yet. I talking to a speech therapist, like what's in the works and everything. And so his speech therapist and I were like, oh, what's a really practical way we can have this everywhere? Because other kids might think that Elijah's talker tablet is for fun, and it's not. It's for communication. And so one teacher, not at the school he's at, but they were like, oh, he keeps it on the shelf. I said, do you keep your whole vocabulary on the shelf and only pull it out when you want to say a couple of things? No. You get to say whatever you want, whenever you want. He gets his talker tablet. It's on his desk. It's all this. But in the lunchroom, that's hard because he's got lunch. On the playground, that's hard because he wants to play. And so there are these massive, basically the talker tablet screen, the main information, whatever. And the speech therapist has posted one on the wall outside of the playground, one in the cafeteria, and then there's one like right when you walk in. And so now other kids can recognize the
cool.
same things that he can, and understand him even better. Elijah specifically, but like it's helping other kids. There's more words, there's pictures, there's when Elijah types things in, whoever he's talking to, especially if it's another kid, they are actually getting 3 intake of information: a picture, out loud, and the words. So it's helping him read, it's helping another kid read.
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't hurt anybody. And most resources are free to little cost.
It's kind of like the safe spaces. And again, I'm going to give the ACCB another shout out that I feel like we have a lot of safe spaces on campus, and they're marked as safe spaces for LGBTQ students. And I feel like those are such simple things, but they mean so much to the community, and especially someone of the LGBTQ community who is not supported and does not have or does not come from a good home, a supportive home. How impactful that is, the pride events, and again, doesn't hurt anybody.
And I do appreciate it. It sort of rolls around weird, and I think this is where like Batesville's getting better. But so we do typically like our Pride event and our Juneteenth event. And if you don't know what Juneteenth is, would love to educate. Maybe we'll talk on that at a different time. But so I hate that it's together because they are two such significant things going on in June. Just right now, I'm grateful that any education has been come out, because I didn't know about Juneteenth until I was like 26 living in Charleston. That wasn't something that we were educated on around here. And so the fact that education is happening, at some point, my dream, we have a Juneteenth celebration and we have a Pride celebration, because those two things deserve to be separate.
Sure.
And so
and I went to the Black Lives Matter rally in 2020, and it was beautiful. It was at the river. People gave testimony, and there was music, and I mean, it was phenomenal, and it was so uplifting. And so I think that having those experiences and like you said, in a small town, and I'm like you, it was actually 2020 before I had ever heard of Juneteenth. And so just the education, and that starts with these kinds of conversations, and being able to do our own research, and again, just having kindness and empathy to learn about those things.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about my social and culture class, is that I got to hear so many different perspectives and learn about so many different people. And that's what I love about my job, is that I get to hear so many different stories, and I'm just fascinated by people and learning about people. And I think that, again, I'm by no means perfect at that. But I do think that I do a good job at just hearing people's stories. If anything else, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
And so I think that we can all, myself included, do better, and we can continue to work at that. And so we love having these conversations. You didn't cry as much as I thought you would.
I didn't tell a lot more story. I think if I would have gotten into more stories, then I would have. Yeah, for sure. Well, I was thinking about, so we have a lot of books for the kids actually on Black culture, Black people in history who have, changed history basically. And we were talking about Martin Luther King Day, and Evadine looked up at me, and I was like holding her. She's 7, but I still tried to hold her like a little baby. And she was like, "Why are you crying when you talk about Martin Luther King Jr.?" And I was like, the fact that she feels safe, like in this community, she hasn't really felt that. Batesville, we're getting better. So one, that. 2, it's hard to educate when Black history is everyone's history, but it's hard to educate sometimes as a white person to my Black children, because my experience is often secondhand and not firsthand.
Sure.
And so obviously their dad, educates them as much as he can as well, but the school system, like, that's just not what they do as much. And so, but her being like, "Why are you crying when you talk about Martin Luther King Jr.?" And because I was looking at her little brown eyes, and I was like, because people, if we lived in a different time, they would have been mean to you.
I will say Sam and I worked really hard to incorporate Black History Month for the kids, and Martin Luther King Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day specifically. Like, we wanted to do a big service project sort of thing, and it was super cold, so we did a lot of education on, instead of just being out of school.
It's also not just Black History time. We have these books, we read them often. Yes. Let me say, it doesn't end with February.
No, but it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and it was cold, and we didn't want to just be out of school and off work, because I don't think that that's what Martin Luther King Jr. had intended for humanity, to just sit at home on that day, on his day. And so we were doing this educational lesson at lunch on Martin Luther King Jr., and I was playing part of the speech, like his, the main concepts of his "I Have a Dream" speech.
They didn't care.
They could have cared less. And I was like, "Y'all know y'all are Black, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "How innocent, like, how innocent that is." And I would,
and it won't be forever.
I would give my soul for it to be innocent forever,
yeah.
But it sure won't be. So again, having these kinds of conversations, I think, help the education, the kindness, the empathy of all of people, all just people in general, but especially people that have experienced discrimination one way or another. So thank you for joining. Please, again, like, comment, let us know what you want to hear next. This is 2 Queens, 1 Conversation. We'll see you next time.